To order, I'll start with roll call. Larry?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Ashley?
Here.
Jeannie?
Here.
Bren?
Here.
And
Here.
Jane.
Oh, I should turn it this way.
Yeah, turn it. No, that, I can't, Jane, I can't even see that. Like, that would help me. We've been having a mental block with me and Jane and Jane's name. And then our student representative is Musab.
Here.
Dylan. Here. Thank you very much, everyone. Notice of meeting.
Meeting was properly noticed.
All right, I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved. Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Please stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first order of business is the oath of office for our newest member, Ashley.
Hello, welcome everyone. It's my privilege tonight to be able to swear in our newest school board member here for Pewaukee. So what she's going to do is basically raise her hand and repeat after me. So I'm going to read through it fairly quickly and just go through it. So it says, I, Ashley Ross, who have been duly appointed to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
I, Ashley Ross, who have been duly appointed to the Board of Education of the Pewaukee Public School District, swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Wisconsin, and will faithfully discharge the duties of said office to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Yay.
Congratulations, Ashley. Thanks for serving.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry, for taking care of that. All right, moving on to our first piece of business. We have the Spotlight on Learning from Asa Clark Middle School.
Mr. Pizzo. All right, thanks for having us tonight. So before we start, I just want to provide like a brief history lesson. So Asa Clark Middle School traditionally had a building leadership team, and it was comprised of people from multiple departments, and it helped make decisions that moved our school forward. Last year, we adjusted that model. We now have an instructional leadership team, which is strictly focused on continuous improvement efforts related to instruction and advancing our instructional practices within the building. We do have another team, which is our school advisory committee, that's focused strictly on climate and culture. But specific tonight, the instructional leadership team this summer did some work on really regrounding ourselves in some instructional practices that had been in place prior to the pandemic and that we really needed to pivot back to. So we're going to talk a little bit tonight about our instructional playbook, and I'm going to kind of walk through some of that. So really the focus of what we were trying to do is to develop and adopt a clear structure for what a lesson looked like if you were to walk into a math classroom or a language arts classroom or a science classroom. So regardless of the content, you would see similar instructional practices in place and no matter what the classroom was that you walked into. And really that focus is to leverage those high leverage research-based strategies that are proven to work with kids. So how we went about doing that was our instructional leadership team. In the summer, we did a book study. We started working on the instructional playbook in the summer, and then we rolled it out with our full staff at the beginning of the year to talk about how it was going to be supported within the building. And ultimately, like our success criteria is we want to make sure that we're having a positive effect on student learning. So like we get to the end of the year, and these are practices that we want to see in all of our classrooms. So as Katie and I go through and do our instructional walkthroughs, we are specifically focusing on providing feedback on the elements of this plan. So kind of talked a little bit about that work, but It was over the course of the summertime, June, July, and August. The team was in. We did some trainings, we did some research, and ultimately kind of put our nickel down with the development of a plan. So really, what guided that work? We didn't just invent this stuff. We really looked at the book study that we did was based on the Gradual Release of Responsibility, which you'll learn a little bit about tonight, and that is based in the work of Doug Fisher and Nancy Fry. We also looked at John Hattie's research, which is probably the biggest educational meta-analysis that has ever been done. And we also did a crosswalk with all of the Danielson teaching domains, which is how all of our teachers are evaluated, specifically looking at the proficient and advanced domains with the Danielson framework. So the biggest question is is teaching an art or a science? It's both, right? So it is a science in that there is a considerable amount of research that shows that there are proven-based strategies that help progress student learning more than other strategies. It's also an art in that the teacher in the classroom is working to develop healthy student-teacher relationships. They're building that culture of learning within the classroom, and ultimately they have a passion for the work that they do. So the answer is really both, but the framework is specifically focused more so on the science of teaching, and that is kind of how we laid things out with our playbook. So the case of an instructional framework is not to undercut teacher expertise or professionalism. It's not to tell teachers what to do, how to say it. It's really to provide a system of expectations and a tool that teachers can use to make informed decisions. It also helps create a common vocab for teachers to discuss teaching with each other, which helps ground improvement practices. All right, so our component really is comprised of three main elements. Tonight we are just going to focus on our daily lesson framework, but there's also a framework that guides our assessment practices, and then there's also a framework that really talks about how should we as teachers and educators utilize technology to advance learning, it's not just a fancy replacement for a notebook and a pencil. So I'm going to hand things over here to Mrs. Spadoni.
All right, good evening. So I'm going to give us a brief overview of what the gradual release of responsibility is, and then our team is going to dive a little bit deeper into what each of those elements are. So the gradual release of responsibility assumes that learning is a relationship between the student and the teacher. It takes both of them in order for learning to occur. And so it clearly lays out how that responsibility is shifted from teacher to student, and it lays it out in 4 different steps. Focused instruction, which would be from the teacher's highest level of responsibility. It's the I do component. Then it shifts into guided instruction, where the teacher is working with small groups or possibly the whole class, where they're doing the learning together. Then it's collaborative learning with students working together with the concept. And then the independent learning comes in where the student owns the most responsibility. It's the I do, some type of assessment, some product-based piece. So again, this is how that learning is a true partnership. It's not just on the student, it's not just on the teacher, and there are middle components that are truly essential for learning to occur. So it starts with that focused instruction. Sometimes you might hear it being said as explicit or direct instruction. It is clearly laid out with an intention and success criteria of what the student should be able to know and do at the end of the lesson or the unit. That guided instruction is really where the art versus the science comes into teaching. This is the teacher knowing the group of learners in front of them and strategically prompting, giving cues, or questioning to gauge where the student is at and act as that guide on the side to ensure student success. So it's where the scaffolding comes in on the teacher end. So that way when they're doing it together for the we do, the teacher knows that the students are ready to go to that next step and release that responsibility and that the students will be successful in that next step. If not, it's the teacher's role to give a higher level of scaffolding to make sure that they're ready to move on to collaborative learning. Collaborative learning, group work, Key element here is that every student has a role to play and is held accountable for that. You guys all remember projects in school, right? Where it was the one kid who kind of was the Trojan horse and then everyone else, was like, oh, okay, we'll just follow along. That's not what collaborative learning as a high leverage strategy looks like. So we're putting that to the side and we're saying in order for collaborative learning to work, kids need to be using academic language correctly and they need to be held accountable for their role in the work. It's working with that skill for an outcome together and gaining that clarity through conversation, working with that target together for the sake of the learning. And then finally, independent learning, greatest student ownership, and that tells the teacher what the kids know up to that point in the curriculum. So, brief overview, we're gonna go into some more examples here with the crew. As we laid out this, as we did our book study on the gradual release model, we then went into what does this look like in our classrooms and what practices do we need to leave behind. So this is a snapshot from our instructional playbook where you'll see it says looks like and focus strategies for focused instruction, and you'll see some of the things I talked about there. And then abandoning some practices. When we were in the pandemic, in the thick of it, a lot of things were just posted on Canvas. That direct teacher instruction was not possible. As we've transitioned back to the classroom now, we're leaving that practice behind as far as Canvas being the go-to and relying on the expert in front of our learners to really guide that instruction at that onset of teacher responsibility, the focused instruction. So with that, I'll pass it over to Tiffany.
So you may notice that within that framework, bell work actually wasn't referenced at all. And we have to kind of talk about that because prior to any student ever coming to my classroom, they're in the hallway. And some of them are rushing to get to their locker, to use the bathroom, and just rushing around. So we have to address that, and some come right away and some are squeaking in or possibly late. So we have to have that bell work that is allowing that student to kind of code switch and realize, okay, let's ground myself, what's happening in class. So we're trying to build an established routine of coming into the classroom and seeing a prompt or either a problem, a writing prompt, or even a community builder. And some form of activity that is low floor, high ceiling, but where they can engage with each other to recenter and refocus on whatever lesson or class they're in for that day. And it might look different. So Carmen's, they're talking in English before they talk about French, and she knows has her consistent routine. However, it's totally different in my classroom where my kids are walking in and there's a math problem and they're all up at boards and different boards different groups every single day. And that's okay. And we want, within this framework, remembering it's a framework, we want teachers to have the ability to figure out what works for them, but building consistency for the students so they have that awareness of I'm walking to this room and I know what's expected of me. So, next up.
Hi, I'm Carmen Behrens. I teach French at ASA. For focused instruction, that's really the I do part of that gradual release of responsibility. And it's an opportunity for the teacher to establish the learning purpose. And a lot of times we see that through the introduction of the clarity statement, the success criteria, and we get to model our own thinking to help students really understand what it is that we're doing in our minds as we're processing this information. Learning targets and learning outcomes are clearly communicated, and when we're modeling different types of instructional strategies, you can kind of see the list there. I won't read them to you, but those are some of the things that we kind of lean into at different times.
Hi, I'm Shannon Gillen. I am Language Arts in ASA, 6th grade. Guided instruction is the next step in the process. So after we have had that direct instruction with students, this could be in a whole group, but most often I find it in a small group settings where you're looking at data or looking at some feedback from the kids and who was understanding the large group lesson and maybe somebody who needs some guidance in some of the lesson that didn't understand it the first time through. So looking at data or feedback that you're getting from the kids, this just could be something that you're observing in the classroom. You're able to make groups. These groups are fluid. They change daily, if not throughout the unit. And you can pull those groups to really make sure kids are getting the information they need before they're moving on to that next step.
All right,
I'm going to talk about the collaborative learning section. So this is when the students have practice to work as a group on the topic of that we're studying. The group, as Katie mentioned, involves academic language, and it also involves them to be held accountable for whatever they're assigned. It also lets the students be able to practice, so they are ready to then apply it independently. We like to sometimes do peer assessment, give peer feedback at this time, use a jigsaw strategy, or also station rotation.
Hi, I'm Casey Bain. I teach 7th grade science and social studies. So the last part that you do is the independent learning. And even if this comes earlier in the lesson than any of the other components, it's for students to practice what they've learned independently. So this can be what's thought of as homework. It can be in school or out of school and has a wide variety of different options depending on your curriculum. So it could look like activities like journaling, projects, doing research, or outside of school, spiraling that review. It is important that the learning can't come too soon after they were in school, because if they learned how to do some math problem at 8 a.m. and then go home and try to do it at 8 p.m., right, they're probably not going to be able to do it independently yet. So it's working on things that they're fluent in and they can practice on their own.
So again, in our framework, it doesn't say lesson closure, but we can't just do all this great learning and then say, okay, out the door, go to your next class. We need to wrap it up, package it up, and give those students the time to reflect and summarize what they've learned, and also complete an exit ticket to give some feedback to the teacher and some formative assessment so that the teacher kind of knows, where's everyone at, what's the level of understanding, what are my next steps for planning for the next day. And with that, we would revisit the clarity slides and just make bigger connections to the why of why did we learn this? Why all the learning activities that happened, how did they connect and what's the importance?
So to kind of take us full circle to review, the focus was to build a framework that teachers could lean on so that there were common instructional practices occurring within the building that included that focused instruction, the guided instruction, the collaborative learning, and then the independent learning. So, do you have any questions? I'm sure a lot.
What's jigsaw strategy?
Yeah, great question. So that would be let's say we were going to read an article, and I would have you read a paragraph, I would have Jeannie read a paragraph, I would have Bren read a paragraph, and Danielle read a paragraph, and then you ultimately would be the subject matter expert for that excerpt that you read, and you would then teach your counterpart on your section. There's a few different ways you can do it, but that's ultimately the gist of it.
What would it look like in math?
You ever jigsaw, Tiffany, in math?
No. Okay, nothing. No. Okay,
Yep.
just curious.
I have a couple questions. My cord's not too long here. Related to the peer assessment process, and then at the end, the self-reflection.
Mhm.
How do you teach the students how to do the peer assessments in a way that they're being very, I guess, either serious about it or that it's reflective of them really getting good positive feedback regarding what they did, or the peer assessment part of it? And then secondly, the self-reflection.
Yep, great question. I'm going to briefly answer it, and then we'll pass it off to the teachers and they can talk about it. But one of our goals with standards-based grading is that there are proficiency scales and rubrics in place for all of the priority standards. And the purpose of having those is to be able to provide better feedback to students. The greatest power in those, if the students can use them themselves to not only assess their peers, but assess themselves. So in practice, do you want to share how you do peer assessment or self-assessment?
With self-assessment, a lot of times we use Google Forms to do this. So rate your understanding of this material or describe how you would teach someone else this material, so that they're really thinking about what they know and what they don't know. For peer assessment, a lot of times we use sentence starters, something that you did really well with is this, and something that you could grow on is this. So it's a little bit focused, it's a little bit guided, but they do have the opportunity to work with their peers.
I was interested to know how long the closure part can take. Like, is it 5 minutes? Can it be 15? I mean, I would think that's a pretty key piece to know where you're at with the kids.
Yeah, I mean, it probably at times when, as a teacher, you get rushed, it's also one of the ones that probably gets missed the most because you run out of time. But it is a very important piece. I would say the length depends a little bit on what type of formative assessment the teacher is going to use in the classroom, right? So you get to the end of the lesson, and as a teacher, you're going to somehow assess, did the students get what I wanted them to get? And so there are multiple ways you can formatively assess students. So I think depending on the length of that formative assessment, it could be, 1 minute with a quick exit ticket that they're handing to the teacher as they walk out of the classroom, or it could be a little bit longer, 5 minutes.
It might be a quick closure one day that would just be something like checking in with them, how many of you got this done today? And then another time when that unit comes closer to an end, it might be a longer reflection at that time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
What were some of the things, either from the standpoint of you as teachers trying to adapt and use this model, what were some of your personal challenges to moving in this direction?
Could you come up to the microphone, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I also didn't introduce myself. I'm Tiffany Twig, math teacher, 7th grade math teacher. I didn't really view this to be as challenging. I know I was in the district for 10 years and I worked on the gradual release model prior to, left for 5, came back, and I just kind of felt like I was just, getting rid of some of the, not bad habits, just different habits of teaching virtually and just resettling back into a really good routine. So I didn't find it to be as challenging. And what our curriculum of open up resources that we're using really pairs well with all of these components. It's not, as we talk about it being a framework, I'm not going into focused instruction first. It's sometimes they're doing the collaborative learning first and trying the problem, but then every time that we're coming together and synthesizing, that is where the focused instruction is. We're like, so for math, it's kind of out of order, but it really works. And we do like little short cycles sometimes within the 3 different activities within a lesson, but it hasn't felt challenging to do. It feels really refreshing to go back into it. So.
Yeah, and Larry, just to kind of piggyback on it, the graduate release of responsibility was something, or is something that has been in place for a long time in Pewaukee. If you go back and look at our personalized learning guidelines, it's right in there. So it's kind of getting back to that. So for some of our new staff who have only been here for like 2 or 3 years, probably was new. But for a lot of our veteran staff, it was not new.
And I think that's what it gave us, some common ground to stand on as far as what we call that. So all of us took a step back to like, oh, I do guided instruction. Yeah, this is how I do that. And it makes it easier to share with your colleagues as to far as what's happening in your classroom. Here's how it looks in my classroom. So it just gave us the wording to use as we collaborate together.
How were the students reacting to these changes?
I don't think that, well, I mean, the change of coming back to school is a different change, but I don't think we've been doing this. Like he had said, it's not new. This isn't really new. It's given us some vocabulary to use together as colleagues. But students, I don't think that students are seeing a huge change in what we've already done. But it's us reflecting and making sure that we're hitting all of these points.
I find the concept of bell work very interesting. And since you've started it, have you noticed a better mental concentration with the students, that they're more engaged, that it doesn't take them halfway through the class till they're really into the subject matter? Have you seen a difference with it?
I mean, I think for many of our teachers, they were already doing it. I think probably for ones that didn't do bell work, because it's really about cognitively engaging students like right when they walk in the classroom, and not having that like time where you got to get them going. But I would say for our staff that it was regular practice, probably didn't notice any difference. But for staff that never used it, I'm sure they noticed a difference.
Yeah, again, I think that's one of the differences probably between some of our newer staff or new to us staff versus veteran staff, because bell work, were you doing bell work when you taught here? I mean, bell work has been established in the district, for probably over 25 years. And so it's it was common ground for many staff, but for those new to the industry or new to us, it might be new, which is good to get that. This is really about, right, that recentering, as Shannon talked about, of getting everybody back on the same page.
Yeah, another another name for bell work is called an anticipatory set. So that's kind of maybe the older language, but the whole idea is to get you into, you know, what it is that you're going to be learning today, but do it very quickly, right at the bell, because you don't want to waste instructional time. You know, as we spent a lot of time this summer as a leadership team really talking about really getting clear on core instruction, and it's only fair to staff to really have that common framework to really talk about that. The graduate release of responsibility model, if you listen to the experts who kind of, you know, write books about this kind of thing, is what often happens is a piece is missing. So you might have, you know, the direct kind of instruction piece from the teacher, but the guided practice piece is missing. And then we go right to independent learning, and we've missed that middle piece, and that can really kind of create a gap. So really having that framework to refer to is really helpful, I think, to make sure that that lesson is really cohesive.
One final question, hopefully. So from the standpoint of the students themselves, their, I guess, engagement or embracing this style, is it consistent across the different classes? Or do some students do well or better with this in some settings, math or the French or whatever, versus other settings with it? And then a second part of that is, what if you have students who just don't engage in this at all?
Well, I'll let the teachers chime in, but I don't think they notice it all. Like, the students don't know what guided instruction is. It's just the teacher up there teaching and asking questions and using cues. But I'll pass it off to any of you if you. I think you any student that's disengaged, I think you would handle this, whether the framework's in place or not. You're going to handle it the same way. Want to chime in?
Yeah, I'll add on just a little something. So my only thought on that is, like, just like anything, we were talking a little bit about the self-reflection and the self-assessment. That takes focused instruction on how to read a rubric and how to self-assess. So when we think about things like collaborative learning, which was really missing during the pandemic, we had to go back to teach how to communicate and how to engage. So if a student is choosing to disengage, there's a reason why. No kid shows up to us and just says, I don't want to do anything today. It's about how to hook them in and how to make sure that they have the prerequisite skills, whether that's from a communication standpoint or from a standard standpoint, to be able to access that learning target. So it's really kind of stripping it back and saying, what is it there that we need to teach them, whether it be standards-based or more of that social learning-based. And, you know, I heard a lot from the group, and you might be wondering, why is Asa Clark focusing on this if they've said it's been in place for 15 years? These 4 elements are so deep. There's so much to them that as we were digging into it over the summer, there was a lot of like, oh yeah, I remember doing this, and fine-tuning it as a whole group. So that's that picture of rowing the boat in the same direction. We now have similar language. We have places to go and things that our staff already feel really good about doing. So it's leveraging that and moving forward with something that is already proven scientifically to work really well. So that's the exciting work that we're excited about.
Yeah, I would just give you, again, a little brief recent history, what a disruption it was on March 13th, 2020, to have basically the rug yanked out from underneath students and teachers, and all right, go figure it out and teach from a screen, and everybody's going home for the next 3-4 months, and then we're going to have kind of what we had in the transition back. It was extremely disruptive to what everybody's practice was. Everybody did their professional best to maximize that impact, but to be able to come in into a very typical normal setting, especially this year, and to reground in what is a good, cohesive approach to designing effective lessons. What is that? Let's reground in that, anchor in that, and then use it as kind of the backbone to the teachers' collaboration is really helpful.
The only thing I have to correct is on March 13th, we thought it was going to be 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
2 weeks max.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of weeks. Little did we know it was going to be. Thanks for coming out tonight. Good job.
right. We do have some citizens in the audience. Julie, do we have any comment cards? Okay. All right, salutes and recognitions.
I have one. So I had the opportunity to attend the high school production of Radium Girls, and per usual, it was a great job done by the cast and directors. So I just want to salute Robin Dennis and James Sevens.
Thank you.
I have one for John and his team, another wonderful audit process and report. So salutes to him and his team.
Anyone else? Yeah, he has to observe a civic meeting. Just observe, okay. Yeah. Take some notes, maybe? All right, Mike?
Danielle or John, anything? I just would salute Christine Barr for organizing our United Way campaign stuff today, and a thank you to John and to Stacy for cooking chili with me for the annual chili cook-off. We don't yet know the results of the competition today, but nice of Christine to organize that, and thanks to the both of you for. And no one was happier, Stacy, than Danielle that you took her spot.
And the people eating.
Yeah, nobody went to the hospital?
Well, we don't know yet.
Yeah, we don't.
Not so far.
All right. Moving on to the consent agenda, we have to accept the minutes from the previous meetings. There was some correspondence included in our packet and gifts. Noble Medical donated gloves and science supplies to the district for $1,615, and Generac donated $1,000 to the Robotics Club. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on to the Business Affairs Committee meeting we had tonight.
We met earlier today, and we met virtually with our lead auditor and partner at Baker Tilly to go through a high-level review of the audit report. And as you saw previously, clean bill of health, or whatever the right term is, no findings found. So again, credit to John's team. We did have some questions, particularly about some of the new GASB things that might be coming up that thankfully won't affect us at all in the future. So if anybody else has any questions, we could probably answer them right now. Otherwise, I would recommend that we accept the audit report.
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving or accepting the audit report, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, moving on to old business. We had the new course recommendations that were presented at the last meeting. Mike, do you want to talk about this, or Danielle, or?
I didn't have any questions, but I'm assuming they would have went to you, Danielle.
I did not receive any questions.
I'd move to approve these new course recommendations, and thank you for the team, Danielle's group, to always looking to advance the options for our students.
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving, should I list them, or are we okay just saying?
As
It's okay.
presented.
All right, all in favor of approving the new course recommendations, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful, thank you. Okay, moving on to new business, the summer school report. Thank you, ladies, for coming in tonight.
Thanks for having
Lisa, how
us.
many of these have you done?
I don't know.
Does
I
it make you
think-
tired just to think about it?
I've done summer school in some capacity for 34 years
Oh, my
now.
gosh.
But
Dang, wow.
this capacity, I don't know, probably 20, 15, 20.
Well, yeah, it's been at least, well, I know I've seen 16 of them with you involved.
I think I've gone through, I was trying to think today, I think it's 8 different summer school principals.
And now she's stuck with me, so.
The good ones are here. So, welcome, and thank you for letting us share our summer school. We had a wonderful summer. Had 1,200 students come to our summer school. Just to kind of preface the beginning, we started with a brand-new secretary, half principal. She was there for half of the year, Amanda was, and then Lindsay came in mid-summer school. So there's been a lot of changes happening. Katie Adams took over part of the associate principal job. Sarah Coburn was home. She usually does that and was home with her baby. So it's kind of been was kind of a crazy start to summer school, and it worked out perfect. So I'm Lisa O'Hearn, and I'm one of the assistant principals at summer school. I teach 5th grade in the district and have for, I don't know, I think I've been teaching 30 years too. So this is just kind of like a collage of our summer school. We have everything from taught rocketry to biking, fishing. We had a new circuit fitness course, basketball, African drumming. We've had anywhere from 4K kids all the way up to 12th grade, 4 credit recovery, and academic and enrichment classes. So there's just a wide gamut of things that were offered this summer. Some of the highlights was, one of the really nice highlights was the teacher pay was increased and the para's pay was increased. And I think that had really helped us to get people. We were struggling. Last year was still a struggle. I'm really hoping that this summer will be much easier. We had a brand new traffic pattern, and some people think that that's not a very big feat, but it's huge when you have 1,200 kids and no busing. So there is a lot of traffic up here. It worked really well. I think I just had one man yell at me, but that was about it, which is really good. Nurses attended our open house, which was really nice. Transition, that was, I felt the biggest, is from Amanda Shack to Lindsay was flawless. Lindsay had come to meetings prior. She was ready to go as soon as Amanda had left. There was communication between the two all the time. If we needed help from Amanda or whatever, it worked out really, really well. Our IT staff, the summer school orientation for the first time, and that was very nice for all of our out-of-district teachers, so they could get their laptops, they could log in, make sure that they had everything set during orientation. We had some new offerings, and I just think that the teachers' overall morale was much better because of the communication that the principals had given them prior to summer school and during summer school. And with that, I'm feeling like a lot of those teachers will come back this coming summer, which is what we've wanted for a long time. So yeah, it's been great. All right, you get all the numbers.
I'm Lindsay Chandelia. I'm the associate principal at Horizon and also the summer school principal. I know these numbers are up there and I'm going to present them, but really all the credit of summer school really goes to this lady standing next to me, Amanda, and Katie Adams and Sarah Coburn. My involvement last year was very minimal compared to all the work that they put in, so I just want to make sure that's acknowledged. So kind of taking a look at some of our numbers, you guys have them in front of you, but I'll kind of highlight some of the important keys there. As Lisa said, we have 1,251 students on campus, which we utilize all 4 buildings, which is really exciting. So just a way to kind of maximize the amount of students that we could service during summer school. Taking a look, it was also increasing. We talked about the non-resident students that were participating. We went from 71 to 92, so that's also increasing. Just the programs that we can offer are really enticing to students, and that makes it really exciting for them to come. I have already received my first summer school email this weekend about when our summer school dates, because we want to plan our vacations around that, because our kids don't want to miss summer school. So just some exciting things for kids to look forward to during those summer months. So there's other numbers there. John, I had to dig into it, help me with some of these numbers. So if you have any questions, lean that way. But some other numbers to talk about, just our staffing updates. As Lisa kind of mentioned, one thing to take note of is the number of PSD teachers went from 40 in 2021 to 32. So we did see a decrease there in the number of in-district staff that were a part of summer school. We also saw an increase in the number of out-of-district staff that increased. And I think, as Lisa said, that might have been the first year that actually occurred where we had more out-of-district teachers than in-district. So something that we want to keep our eye on. Obviously, when we have in-district, they knew the routines, they know the buildings, they know that kind of insider information, and when it comes to technology. So the little bit of a struggle that we dealt with was just transitioning everybody into that and making sure they were prepared to teach on our campus. So something that we continue to look at, but again, we're hoping with that advanced communication and keeping in the loop on stuff that we can recruit people back and even have some people that have taught summer school previously return. You can also see one big highlight was our high school helpers. They did a phenomenal job supporting our students and being present and just honestly acting as paraprofessionals. Some days, like they got to know the kids so well and they interacted so well. They did a really great job with our high school helpers. The other thing we want to talk about is high school credit recovery that we took part in. Katie Adams and Sarah Coburn really get the credit for all this, but it just kind of states the number of students we had enrolled. And then it kind of also goes down to 93% of students were able to successfully complete the program by the end of summer school. So, looking ahead, do you want to take that one?
So looking ahead, we want to continue some communication. We had a new robotics teacher. She's actually teaching at Asa Clark. I can't remember her name. It'll come to me. She's teaching at Asa Clark. She's brand new this year, has kids in the district. And she took over this robotics class, not really knowing what to do, and said, I'll just do it. And we ended up contacting the robotics supervisor from our robotics team. And they really worked well together, and we're trying to keep that going because they want to recruit kids for high school. And the Lego robotics class in summer school goes up through 8th grade. So they really want those 7th and 8th graders to continue on. So I think that's going to be really huge this summer. We're going to meet with the high school administration and try to better support the teachers for credit recovery. We didn't have any teachers in credit recovery that were in-district teachers, and I think it's really important to try to get some teachers from district to help with that. So that credit recovery piece is kind of our big one that we're going to be working on. The technology department, we collaborated with them really well. It worked much better this year. Hopefully that will continue. It says on here, securing a summer school secretary. We do have one. So Nicole Hust is going to be our summer school secretary, which will work out really nice because she's at Horizon School, so we can work together. It'll make things easier. Continue to promote summer school for our in-district teachers. And we were thinking of videotaping procedures for EEL families. And that's because some of them have a language barrier on how to sign up and how to register. So we thought if we did that, it might be beneficial to them. And then just keep adding new classes to our program.
Oh, and this is the last thing we want to end with today. These are the proposed and most likely the dates for our upcoming summer school year this summer. So you guys can take a peek at those, and we're going to get working on our brochures and all the stuff that goes along with the summer school work. But these are kind of our proposed dates for session A and B. And that's it. Any questions or thoughts?
I'm a math girl. So you served 130 more students with 13 less staff?
Yeah, we did. And the way that we did that is the classes were increased.
Okay.
We were very short on staff. We were hiring, and Amanda would hire and then they'd quit, and then we'd hire again and they'd quit. It was really, really tough for her. So we ended up just taking what we had, and those classes were bigger, and that's why a lot of those high schoolers played a part as well. So they would help with the classes that were larger.
I commend you for having a success despite that. Yeah, and great idea
Thank
with
you.
the high school helpers.
So besides the credit recovery, are there other things that we do to help want to incentivize our teachers to want to be a part of summer school?
Well, I think a lot of teachers in general are just tired. It's,
Yeah.
you know, with COVID, and I mean, we keep blaming things on that, but it's been hard.
Yeah.
And trying to get things back in place after that, and the whole world is, you know, in turmoil. So we did raise their pay, and I thought that would help. I think it just depends upon where people are in their family situations too. You know, if there's a wedding, they didn't attend, or if they had a baby that summer, or, you know, things like that. So one year might be bad that way, and then the next year it might go up. It just kind of depends upon where everyone is in their life as well.
I had one quick question. Relative to the high school helpers, are they do they get any pay, and are they tied in with our Insight program, or what are the qualifications for that?
No,
As a high school helper.
they actually interview, and we hire them, and we give them courses. What I do is I go through the whole entire schedule, and I look at classes that have a lot of kids, and then I make a schedule for the high schoolers. Some of our high schoolers worked with, this year we had 3 or 4 that worked really well with the special ed kids, and they were kids that aren't one-on-one according to their IEPs during the school year, but in summer, they need someone there because they're going from building to building and class to class. So some of those kids worked one-on-one with special ed kids as well. And I know of 4 of them that are going into education, so it really looks good for them for a resume. And they do get paid. I don't know what do they get? I don't know, eight, you should know, John. $8.25
That's the start of the first year.
first year, yeah.
Lisa, how many different credit recovery classes were there?
Credit recovery?
Yes.
We had math, science, social studies, and English. And then we had 4 credit classes of health and PE, so they could take those during the summer and not have to take them during the school year.
So if they took a math course, it could be a combination of freshman math, sophomore math, whatever
The-
they did
the-
pass?
Well, it's standards based, so we look at where they failed and what classes they failed, but there's teachers in the room that teach more than one math course to different kids. Same thing with social studies. We have 2 social studies teachers for summer school that teach the whole gamut of the social studies offered in high school. So it's individualized.
Okay.
What kind of new classes do you see coming up? Can you give us a peek?
You know, we try all kinds of new classes, and we've also gotten rid of some that were really popular, like the cooking classes, because during COVID we didn't have it, and it just, what we do is on the application, we have a list of the classes that we offer and things that we don't offer as well, just listed, and the teachers will put 1 through 10 as to what they want to do the most to the least. And then on the bottom, they can add their own classes. So mostly the new classes aren't what we come up with, it's what the teachers want to teach.
Nice. Big fan of summer school, by the way.
I don't have a question, but just a comment. From the elementary school level, I want to say I've actually never done summer school with my kids. But with a lot of friends that we have that do participate in the summer school, they all love it. Now my kids are actually asking to go to summer school
Well, thank
this coming
you.
year, so.
It's a great program. Traffic, not so good, but that's great.
You get them trained pretty good after the first couple days.
It does. After the first, exactly. They've kind of figured out where to go, and
I made the mistake of coming here once during that time, and I was like, oh, I should have known. How did I do this? How did I pick
you
this
have to
time?
stay in that loop.
Well, I just want to compliment you both. I mean, 1,256 students, I think it was. And to put it in perspective, there's 900 students that go to the high school. There's about that many that go to PLs, right? So we often say the summer school is our largest school, right? You know, you had almost 80 teachers, and right, it's a big task, and it's condensed into half days over a short period of time, and an awful lot gets accomplished. So I really appreciate the leadership you guys provide. I want to acknowledge Lindsay, who, was towards the end of her first year of being an associate principal, and it was kind of the passing of the baton, because it went from Jody to Amanda to Lindsay. But, this is, no good deed goes unpunished, right? She had done a really good job as an associate principal. Hey, now you get to be summer school principal too.
And then you did that well.
So, but you guys do a great job, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to personnel issues.
We have no resignations. We have an employment where we recommend Clayton Burt, who's currently a long-term sub in replacement for Kelly Marks, who resigned as counselor at Horizon. Clayton would be a limited term replacement for her for the remainder of the year. So take any questions that you have, otherwise I'd seek your approval.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor of approving the employment of Clayton Burt, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful.
I have to say, Stacy, I work with him Thursday mornings when we do breakfast. The kids really like him.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, and he was with Champions
Yeah.
too, as he's been working on getting his licensure and his degree, so. But there'll be a full-fledged hiring process in the spring, so, with full applicants now that Kelly has resigned, so. And there's no leaves.
Okay. All right, moving on to board goals and operations, upcoming activities. Our next meetings are, it's actually the learning session on Monday, December 5th at 6 p.m. We're going to be meeting in the district office conference room for that one. Our next board meeting is Monday, December 12th. We'll be having both the Business Affairs and Policy Committee at 6, regular board at 7, and then we take a little break and we meet again on Monday, January 9th, again with the committee meetings beforehand. And then our meeting on Monday, January 30th is the data meeting.
Yeah, that's the learning session with,
Yeah.
Looking at your self-reflection from the survey. And so you'll have a little Candace and Dr. Matarazzo. And I would say this, I had my coaching call with Dr. Matarazzo just like last week, and she just wanted me to check with the board, and you don't have to answer now if you think of anything, if there's anything different you would like to see her do, in terms of facilitating that discussion for, Bren, Jane, and Ashley. You haven't been a part of that piece yet, but Melissa just really facilitates that conversation, in particular focus on board superintendent relationships. So,
And
in particular for those of you who've been involved before, if you have anything that you would like to see different, then just let me know.
And I'm carrying on John Blast's torch. I finished the survey last night.
Just in time.
Just in time. All right.
I don't think I did mine. I gotta go look. I can't remember anymore.
I bet you would have gotten an email if you didn't turn it in. Okay,
From
moving
John.
on to legislative advocacy. Any updates?
I can say that we have scheduled a meeting with Adam Nalen. He's going to be visiting. Stacy's going to join us. John and I, and Danielle, I think you had a conflict, right?
I am going to try to clear that conflict, but I'm not sure yet.
And that is
December 8th, I want to say.
December 8th. So, so happy that he accepted our invitation to come in, so we look forward to meeting with him and talking about kind of the upcoming legislative agenda. I was, as a editorial note, I was encouraged a little bit, just reading some of the stuff in the paper about some discussions where some of our legislative leaders and our governor are actually talking to each other. They basically haven't for 2 years, so hopefully some things can get accomplished at the state level. So, but we look forward to, Adam's always been a real good resource and supporter of the district. You might recall he did strategic planning with us in the spring, so looking forward to having some time with him.
Plus, I mean, a while back, he was really active in robotics as well,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
make sure you thank him for that. I mean, because those are the things where it's really a nice connection and a recognition and understanding of that and how he could support that at the state level, and it's great, so.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, in particular for budget planning, to really try to get a sense of where things might go in the next biennium. That's going to be a big deal. So hopefully we'll start to see some things come out. We all know that the state's got a real big surplus that they have to decide what to do with, and so I'm sure there's going to be a lot coming up as we get into 2023.
Okay, moving on to our WISB and NSBA presentations.
Yeah, I think we're pretty set in terms of going to be involved with the presentations. If there's any changes or you have an interest in being more involved with something, then please let Julie know.
There was one correction. Post-secondary success while in high school listed me there. I'll be the delegate at that point, so I can't participate.
Thank you, Brian.
And I'm gonna ask Julie tomorrow to help set up, schedule a meeting with anybody who's presenting with Adriana and I, for probably like that first week in January when we come back to go over the presentations, to get your feedback and make any edits so that everybody feels comfortable with what we're doing. So we'll build those here in the next couple of weeks.
And I want to do the one at the WASB and the NSBA, the same session. I'll be, because that doesn't list my name on the NSBA one, I don't think, but.
So both you and Stacy are gonna be doing
Says Larry, right?
post,
No,
okay,
says
got it.
No, it doesn't. You're right. That's attendance.
You are in. Yeah, and they readjusted the timing of the one session, because I had that conflict because I was on that superintendent panel, but now they moved those so that I can attend our presentation.
Okay, and then the NSBA membership is coming up, the renewal. So the renewal fee is $4,165. Is there any discussion, any concerns about renewing with the NSBA?
We're looking for a motion to approve it?
I have a question.
Need a motion,
though.
do we need
I
a
have a
motion?
question. Is the Wisconsin Association, are they members of NSBA? They still are not?
They're not.
They're not.
What about local, other districts around us? Are they members of NSBA? Like how many?
It's a hodgepodge.
Yeah, I'm sure some are. It's a good question, Jane. We can try to find more information and do some checking in the area as who is a member and who is not.
I mean, I know, I mean, is it still the same reason that the Wisconsin Association is still not members with them from the letter from last year? Or is there other reasons that they're not members? I'm just curious.
I think it was still basically the letter that they dropped out in
Yeah.
terms of the reasons for it. But I mean, historically though, I mean, the WASB is kind of its own membership kind of thing, but every other school district, you still pay your own NSBA. It's not like it's a connected, if you will. So, and I don't know if there's been a lot of the school districts that have dropped out. I mean, WASB chose to drop out, but there's probably some
Oh,
pushback.
so it's, because I saw the 5,800, and so it's not a discounted rate because, I mean, it's not that we get a discounted rate because the WASB, I read that set differently. I
Yeah,
guess
that's
it's-
a good, yeah, so,
I
and
thought
I find this kind of strange.
Yeah.
So, and thank you to Julie for, being so tuned in as to what was, and to ask the question. So they had originally billed us 5,800, but apparently that's supposed to take place next year. And Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, if WASB is not a member? Yeah, so, and I don't know why that would be the case, but, the rate, so I don't know if there's like a transition, Jane, or something that's gonna happen, but their intention is to raise the fees for individual districts if their state associations aren't members, which I find to be an interesting approach, but
that's a decision for next year, right?
but that's for next year, so, when that would be increased.
Do you know if WASB is looking to bring their membership back this next year? Or have you heard anything? or-
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what their plan is. I mean, I do know, and some of you might know better than I, you know, NSBA with that whole situation with the letter that was sent really without approval to the Biden administration. And that I believe everybody that was involved with that from the board and NSBA are all gone, have been removed. And so, you know, the people that were responsible for that are no longer part of the association. So that much I know, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's all I know too.
Yeah.
I mean, because it was one of those, probably not such a good political move on their part. I mean, because it was an interim executive director, and the person who was the president of the NSBA essentially made that decision on their own, never took it to any other executive committee or even to the full board. They sent that letter on their own, 2 people, okay? That's my understanding. And then the representatives that we had, and there were 3 from our area, one from Michigan, one from Ohio, and a lady from Minnesota,
And I reached out to all three of them and said, how could you do this? Because they chose to resign from the board rather than address the issue of being our representative and saying, what were you doing? What were you thinking in terms of allowing that to happen? Because again, from a standpoint of being representing our area, our region, they chose to bow out. They chose to withdraw themselves from the process, even though they could have stayed and actually kind of had that conversation, but they had no way to give input once they resigned from the board. So it was just kind of like, why are you resigning from the board? Because you're our representatives.
That being history, what it is, NSBA is still our strongest representative at the federal level, the largest and strongest organization to represent the needs of school districts.
And I don't think we've typically taken a motion on this, but we certainly didn't want to renew without consensus. You certainly can decide by a motion if you would like to, or
Up to this last year, it's just been an automatic
we
renewal.
just have just automatically renewed, but be considering, you know, what took place, and with WASB removing themselves from NSBA, and I don't know if they just want to really see how things unfold. I don't know if they're planning on joining. You might hear about it at the delegate assembly, perhaps, but it's really, that's why I want to bring it, because it's really your decision. I want to bring it to you.
Probably just a point of clarification, given that we don't have that on a specific, as an agenda item to make a motion on it.
You can't really, can you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, obviously.
Well,
if we just-
let me do this.
you
Does
kinda just-
anybody have concerns about us renewing with the NSBA?
I just have one more question. So we find value in it because of the advocacy. How about some other, what other value does it add for us? Because, yeah, I mean, I was appalled by that letter. And I know that they retracted it and apologized, but still, that was some strong and offensive language that they had in there that came out. And usually customers don't go back to organizations that do something like that. So I guess I just would like, I just kind of, I have less experience as to how our school district, our students, our administration find value in it. And I can be convinced that there's value. I just don't know what it is.
Well, just like the WASB has a whole, what would you call it, library full of information or how-to, and the key work of school boards comes from the National Association. So they have a larger library, if you will, of how to advocate, mostly at the federal level, but there's all kinds of other tools for school boards at that level as well.
And if
So
I
it's
can-
like the WSB in that sense.
And if I can go back to a point that Larry made, it's a membership organization, so as a member, we have a voice. And I agree with Larry on your, the decision of those reps to just quit. That didn't help anything. I mean, they were our representatives. So as members, I feel like we have the ability, if something were to happen again, as we did the first time, to express our opinion in that. So that's the other thing, is I think that we've seen the positive changes that have been made in the leadership. And as a member organization, I feel like we have the ability to, stay in tune with what the leadership is doing.
If I remember correctly, I think we actually crafted and created a letter.
Yeah, and
that
we
sent.
posted
I
it.
mean,
We-
it was out there, and,
Right.
so I mean, we spoke up, which was legitimate and fair in terms of what's there, and let them know our direct thoughts, because it's appropriate. Yeah, so.
Anyone else?
I have no issue.
Julie, any comments from citizens? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 63 minutes.
Nice.